there's a new kind of cultural addiction or shift going around right now. It's being advertised during major sports events. It's all over social media. And even at family barbecues or around the dinner table, it's a topic of conversation. I'm talking about the rise of GLP-1 use, which is a drug that affects people's motivation and pleasure drive. And these drugs are gaining tremendous traction, even for people who don't medically require using them. They're seeking out telehealth appointments and they're gaining a prescription and then sometimes spending hundreds of dollars a month. Yes, this medication seems to stop all kinds of bad behavior in its tracks. And some even report that it saved their lives and they'd never go back and they'd never go off of them. But there's a really freaky side effect that is poisoning our collective environment, and that really scares me. And I think you should be aware of it if you aren't already. And please don't think in this video I'm going to talk about weight loss or the moral failings of people choosing to take this route. I'm not. What I want to talk about is the normalization of apathy that's coming along with this rising use of GLP-1s and how it's affecting all of us in very damaging ways. I want to cover how this damages us all and the questions that we can ask to stay on the track of wisdom instead of falling into false traps of happiness down the road at any cost. That's what we'll get into today. And before we do, I'd like to humbly ask you to subscribe to my channel. I'm out here putting my unique synthesis of wholeness, separation, and how to reconcile the two into the world that we share today. And I'm putting it out there on the internet, and I can use all the help that I can get, as I'm doing this alone, without a team, and without the help of AI. If you want to hear more of what I have to share and take away practical advice on how to live on the path of wholeness, I ask you to please like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you. Now back to the video. Some of these medications result in anhedonia, which is the inability or reduced ability to feel pleasure from doing what you once enjoyed. Many people who use GLP-1s report feeling less, and this being worth it to them, and some decide that it's not worth it to them, and they use them for a bit, and then they get off of them. However, in the greater culture that we're swimming in, it's now becoming chic and cool and worth it to attain goals like weight loss or overcome alcohol use disorder through these drugs at the cost of feeling desireless and sometimes joyless. I think these drugs are partially responsible for why suddenly the new poster child for success can also be unable to feel pleasure. Yet, if it corresponds with goals like extreme weight loss or other outward goals, it's okay and normal to not really feel much. And I'm finding a really dark corner of the internet right now, where people are telling the truth of what happens to them when the reality of what they've become sinks in after taking this drug over time. I think the biggest unseen problem with these drugs right now doesn't have to do with weight or health, or even the part that privilege plays in who gets medical care or mental health care in this country. I think the biggest problem is how dangerous normalizing numbness really is, and the lasting impact on our ability to care for ourselves and for one another in a way that is authentic. The problem is that when people accept apathy in exchange for conformity, when it becomes okay to accept not only less desire for food, but less desire for pleasure of all kinds, this condenses our access and our ability to think clearly and critically and compassionately as a whole. Not only that, but desire is a motivation that provokes us to evolve toward a more meaningful life. And when that is cut off, when we settle for an unquestioned life, without that curiosity for something more, human beings' spirits are crushed, and we stop evolving and creating and expanding into our full capacity. GLP-1s are a class of prescription medication originally prescribed for diabetics. And I'm not attacking the demographic who still needs it for that purpose. I'm not attacking anyone, actually. But what happened in the 90s was that the rise of a cultural aesthetic preference became the norm, and it became known as heroin chic. Basically, extreme thinness was in, and this prevailed through the so-called body positive movement of the late 2010s until about just after COVID, when thinness as the prevailing beauty standard came back. You may not have noticed, but we are in a returning cycle of this, which is quite obvious in celebrity photos of the present, to say the least. It is front and center in pop culture. Extreme thinness is in. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not blaming GLP-1s for this resurgence. Everything comes in cycles and waves, of course. Although they do play a role because for the first time ever, it is now possible for people to shed pounds by taking a pill or a shot that affects the pleasure-seeking desire centers of the brain. And that is new. The reason that I'm making a video about this is because there's a sense of urgency that's been drawing my attention around this cultural phenomena, because all of us are affected by it, even people who don't have any involvement with these drugs, who feel like simply it does not apply to them. The truth is, though, that we are all parts of the moving sculpture of humanity. And the collective values of the time that we're in permeates our psyche, whether we like it or not, even if we think we're not impacted. And this is because we were all blank slates as babies, absorbing through osmosis what the adults around us gave meaning to. And this doesn't stop when we grow up and form our character. Character is not fixed. It continues to be fluid and shaped by our social spheres, which aren't limited to our immediate family and friends and colleagues. It touches culture. It breathes the collective, so to speak. When desire loses appeal and a kind of damp, flat, joyless existence is paraded as not only normal, but the preferred option, our social realm reflects that back to us, and the programs within our unconscious kick in to make sure that we're not left behind. Now, this isn't a conscious choice, which is why it's imperative that we bring attention now to where numbness is being invited into our lives and is unquestioned in our own lives. I've been spending some time now on the internet looking into the way these medications work and who is using them and why, and also out of curiosity, because to be honest, I have urges like most people to be liked and accepted and welcomed in by others within our society. And I had a really, really destructive relationship with my body and food and other things for the first half of my life. And if I'm completely honest, if I could just snap my fingers today and have zero health concerns and no unhealthy behaviors, I would do that. And I think that we all would. But what I saw during my research was scary. In Reddit posts, in comments on social media, these types of medical interventions affect desire, which is inherently emotional. And this numbness isn't worth the trade-off for the thinness that it offers in the case of GLP-1s. Or in a similar way, the trade-off of fewer wrinkles in the case of things like Botox. I actually made a really freaky discovery, which was that women using Botox report feeling trapped in their face, specifically because they physically cannot make expressions of certain emotions after having that procedure. And several studies point to the actual inability for women to experience sexual pleasure because they can't make screwed up faces. And our expressions correspond to orgasm. Yeah, that was really, really sad and horrifying to read. I want to draw attention again to the fact that this is not relevant only to people who take medicines or have these cosmetic procedures done. And for goodness sakes, there are people who need these medicines to actually help them with medically diagnosed conditions. And I am not saying that there aren't situations where it makes sense to use these drugs. What I am saying is that the purposeful disfigurement of our emotional landscape is becoming acceptable. And it is very important that we notice, question, and challenge that. I could take up a whole video about the market value of people feeling less and the political reasons that this kind of cultural shift is so dangerous. I'm not going there today. This is spiritual disfigurement first and foremost. And that is the most dangerous fact of this situation, period. The fact is, if I'm at a crossroads and I could move in line with the values that motivate me to be alive and live as well as I can while on this earth, or I could move away from my values and toward a strategy that comes from a more reptilian part of myself, wanting to be liked and accepted and having stuff that people might think is cool. At that crossroads, if I could go to a more truthful way or to more of a past informed way, which is the direction that gets me what I really want? For me, in my journey through suffering and addiction and eventually beyond it, in every single area of my life, if I don't choose truth, I'm choosing ignorance. And I've learned that we are not individuals. Even though we experience a world that seems entirely fragmented, it's really obvious when we take a moment to think about it. Breath and water and food. The body is an open system. Additionally, this psyche has no border. Where I end and you begin, it's open. It's transient. We share everything. And the fact that our communication holds any meaning at all points to our shared context, which is awareness. Awareness isn't mine or yours. Nobody can patent awareness or confiscate it, for that matter. It is our shared being. When I say we can choose to go toward ignorance, what I really mean to say is going toward the belief to be separate. And I want to ask you, how difficult is it to see that what drives the behaviors to pick up a drug and feel some relief is the desire for relief from discomfort? But why is that discomfort even there in the first place? The fact is that it's pointing to a truth below the pain. Just like the truth about somebody who lies is revealed in the action of their telling a lie. A truth is revealed about us when we reach for another drink or cookie or cigarette. It's what we're cherishing in that action, what we're holding on to, that is revealed. And accessing that revelation holds the solution that all people are thirsty for, and it tells us two very important things. The first is that there's a belief that what is already here right now is incomplete. The second is much more subtle, so I want you to let this one sink in. Here it goes. The second truth that is revealed about us when we reach for another substitute to find relief from discomfort is that in that moment, a story about reality is happening. And that story is, I am separate from the whole. And I'd like you to ask yourself if that's true. If we never hold that story up to the light and find out if it's really true, could we ever reach the deepest possible connection with ourselves and other people, or reach anything at all beyond what we assume is possible when we think we're separate? The fact is, desire isn't just an animal impulse that we need to suppress and then move on with our lives. It's a powerful medicine that delivers us to the one desire that all other desires are attempting to give us, an experience of oneness. When the realization that no desire is ever going to give us the experience of oneness, through trying and failing, we naturally reach a tipping point that pushes us over the edge to really find oneness in what is real. I beg you, please do not mistake desire as your enemy. Do not succumb to numbness. Superficial desire and its inherent disappointments let you reach that edge. And from there, all human beings can discover their capacity for wholeness. This is the inbuilt spiritual principle of humanness itself. The truth is that because the view we have of separateness is just a mirage on a very superficial level of conscious experience, when we seriously take a look, there is no evidence that supports our inherent separateness. In fact, all the evidence seems to point to that which is already illuminated for many of us who are following this one desire for truth. We aren't divided. We are one. Don't get me wrong. This understanding doesn't always come in fully all at once. It often takes time to become ready. It certainly took a lot of grasping and chasing and falling on my face for me. But maybe you are ready. And if you think that you may be, the first way I would suggest that you allow this to unfold even more deeply is to become really, really authentically curious. Ask yourself, are my actions in a moment of desire based on the story that I am separate, or that I am inseparable from the whole? Ask yourself, what evidence do I have that I'm separate? Is there any way that I can be completely sure that this awareness is mine and limited and separate and isolated from awareness where you are and where there appears to be awareness happening in another person? Where is the division? Where does the border actually exist? It's totally normal if the answers that come when asking these questions aren't clear or have stories and reasons and narratives that come up. I'm certainly not suggesting that you adopt a new desire from what I'm suggesting here to be free of thinking or to be certain about anything or anything like that. It's just a significant step to question our assumption that desire is something that we need to conquer. When we think of desire like a resource like rainforests or the minerals of the earth, is wanting to eradicate it or only use it for our personal gains any different than the legacy of colonization that has been going on from the axis of power in the West for the last 500 years. The opposite of colonization is individuation with the wholeness that we already are, together, one step at a time. Perhaps your step right now is to look at where you are inviting or normalizing numbness. Maybe the next step for you is to simply identify your real values. Do you value individual success over interrelationality? Do you recognize awareness of meaning in your life? Do you agree that desire can transform from desire for egoic gains into a different, higher yearning for the fullness of meaning? And if you're still here, I believe you have some very interesting answers to these questions that are already showing up for you. I thank you for being here today. That's all I have for you. I'd like to share that I am extending my June offer into July of this season, 2026. So if you're interested in a bonus relational assessment with me to find out where you are on the scale of grandiosity or shame within relationship with others, I would be happy to offer that to you for free on top of one of my wholeness work sessions. And exploring wholeness work is the process of dissolving the egoic sense of self into the awareness that you are. If you'd like to know more about the work that I do, please go to wholenesswisdom.com. If you register for a session before the end of July, I'll tack on that free relational assessment. And please let me know your experience with desire and apathy in your life. Do you use a GLP-1? And has it affected your experience of emotions? Do you have a history of coming through desire to something even deeper or more vast, or perhaps spiritual? I would love to know in the comments. Please let me know. I'd love to continue this conversation, as always. Thank you so much for being here with me today, and I'll see you around the channel.